Where's the drink? Sure, you're slugging. Sure, you're real slugging.
You're being recorded for eternity. What's the word for it? Yes. Not a small fish. Cotton ato beinecha v'ishifti yisol ato. Posuk and Shmuel. Simcha Hashem. Getting a drink, okay. Rained a lot today. I was reading some Goisha book. They should take a challenge. What? No, you didn't. When? Not this morning, not this afternoon. Pouring. It says a challenge. 21 days of no complaints. So I said, wife, let's do it. So let's try 21 minutes. It's not easy. I don't know. Complained about the weather, and also, so I find very hard is the Sunday afternoon. The house becomes a mess. We had like somebody's not feeling so well. Somebody's not feeling well. Send all our kids to us. We had like literally mess in every corner of the house.
You're not lying.
I am actually. Why?
Thank you. I remembered well. What?
Yeah. It was probably a bubble.
I'm saying, yeah,
it was quite an easy one.
Can they arrest you for something you did in the past? Surely not. Okay, let's start. And I can't.
They can do anything. They've been given a power to do whatever they want.
David, diet or regular? Oh, you're health conscious like I am. not that health conscious actually. Okay, we've got quite a lot to cover. We're up to Tzadik Zayin with base the Mishnah towards the end of the not sure. Right, we're up to the Tzadik Zayin with base by the Mishnah towards the end of the page. You're going to ask me in a few minutes on this. I'm just Tzadik Zayin with base towards the end of the page. It's actually less than a week. It's a week to the Simmers to look forward to everybody coming. Right. The point is like this. We're going to do quite a lot of halachas today. So let's get some of the halachas clear. If I've got a massive bath towel and I'm at home in the Rishus HaYachid and I live outside my house as a Rishus HaRabim and I throw, while holding on to one end of the towel, I throw the other end of the towel into Rishus HaRabim. What have I done?
Nothing.
Why have I done nothing?
It's not left your hand yet.
Very good. We had it in Shabbos, but you could argue with that. Oh, this is the Gemara. Wait a second, you're jumping a little bit. Let's get this. No, there's actually no machlokes about this.
I don't just say machlokes.
No, but you're right. What's the Yesod Advarim? The Yesod Advarim is that while a part of it is still in the Rishus HaYachid, even though 99% of it is in the Rishus HaRabim. Let's go again. Let's say this. If I throw the whole towel from my house into Rishus HaRabim, I've done an Issa D'Oraisa, right? If you take your towel, throw it outside, it's wet, you say, go get in bad mood, throw it outside, Issa D'Oraisa. But because I threw 99% of it, but 1% I'm still holding on, I'm holding on to the last bit of the towel, I've done nothing min HaTorah. I have done Issa D'Rabban. Right. Next, Nekudes, that is only if it's a Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim. Let's say I've got a front doorstep and I'm standing on my front doorstep. What's the status of my front doorstep? That's quite a hard question. It's a trick question. Oh, depends on the size. And now you have to say better than that. Depends on the size and what extra point. It's complicated. What does it depend on? What depends on the size? You'll kick yourself in a second. If it's higher than 10 tefachim in your front doorstep, then it's Rishus HaYachid. Lower, it could be a mokim petur comes. So let's say I'm standing on my front doorstep, which is lower than 10 tefachim. It's not Rishus HaYachid. And it is higher than 3 tefachim, so it's not Rishus HaRabim. and I'm standing there and I throw my towel out and I'm holding one end of the towel. So now, if I throw the whole towel from my front doorstep into the Shusarabim, what have I done? If it's a mock between nothing, if it's a karmelis, it's an issa d'Rabbanan. If I've held on to it, so I've only done what's called a double d'Rabbanan.
Well, which one?
Right. So no, there's two different kinds of doorsteps. Depends what the height is. There's actually three kinds of doorstep. There could be a doorstep which is sayachit if it's hand and 10 tefachim. There could be a doorstep which is a mokim petur if it's very narrow and not very high. Very good. This discusses that. It can actually be Rosh Hashanah in your front doorstep if it's exactly 9 tefachim high and people use it as a loading stage, loading bay. Okay. So front doorstep, in the case, if you throw the towel and you're holding onto the towel, you've done nothing, you've done something. If you're standing on your front doorstep, you could be doing even less. So let's see now the Mishnah inside. Now the Mishnah doesn't want to talk about a towel. The Mishnah is talking about the Sefer Torah. The Meroim Sodus says a very nice point. The first Mishnah in our Perk, what did it discuss? Anybody remember? Very good, Tefillin. And this is talking about the Sefer Torah. It says the connection is, even though halachically there's not much connection in the sense that was talking about carrying tefillin, which you find abandoned in the field to the house. Here we're talking about somebody reading a Sefer Torah and his hand slipped and a whole load of it rolled out. Right? So that's the shaila. Now, Talia has already done us the favor of loading up the pictures. Those who don't have the pictures should look inside. It's Kedai to look at the pictures just for 1 second. Can you show? It must be more than one picture book around. Where's another picture book? So show it to Moshe and David. I just look at it very, very briefly. Tov Kufay Aleph. Do you do the Tov Kufay Aleph? So Tov Kufay Aleph, no, because we're finishing Eiruvin. Tov Kufay Aleph is somebody sitting on his front doorstep and he's reading from a Sefer Torah. And what happened was the Sefer Torah rolled out. That is Tov Kufay Aleph. He's sitting on the front doorstep. Tov Kufay Base is sitting on his rooftop. And Tov Kufay Gimel is sitting on his rooftop. But it rolls much closer into the Rosh Hashanah. So those are the three basic discussions we're discussing. Oh, no, not later we'll make, but not Pashas. Right. So you've got it. I just want to point out, what's the status of a roof? Anybody know what's the status of a roof? Yeah, the walls go up. It's a Rishus Hayachid. As well, what's the actual status? You're not allowed to carve Rishus Hayachid to Rishus Hayachid. Okay, so if you're on the roof, you're Rishus Hayachid. It says in the Mishnah, a person Shabbos afternoon is learning from a Sefer Torah, Allah is skupa, and he's sitting on the doorstep. With this gargula Sefer miyodoi, and the Sefer rolled out of his hand. You can roll it back up. Why can you roll it back up? You're sitting on the doorstep and it rolled out of your hands, most of it. Oh, that's what I thought. Let me explain what Shai said. It's a double d'Rabbanan. First of all, my doorstep is only a karmelis. That's a d'Rabbanan. Pashtus, most doorsteps are karmelis. It's not Rosh Hashanah. It's not private domain. It's not public domain. It's only a d'Rabbanan. So it's only one d'Rabbanan. Second of all, I didn't all roll out to my hand. Only 90%. I'm holding on to one hand of them. Another bit rolled away. So it's only a double d'Rabbanan. As you remember, if you're holding on to it, double d'Rabbanan for the sake of the Sefer Torah should be mutter. That's how I thought. The Gemara Ma'aser goes back and forth, pshat. But that would be the simple explanation. For some reason, Gemara doesn't come to that one so quickly. If you're standing on the rooftop, but this gag la Sefer Miyodu, so now here it's slightly worse. Why is it worse? Because you're in the Shusay Yochid. Mashenkin, if you'd be on your doorstep, you're not necessarily in the Shusay Yochid. Then Guliloi Etzlo. Sorry, I've lost the place. Actually, get asad tefachim until you get to 10 tefachim. Guliloi Etzlo. Meaning, if it's still 10 tefachim higher than the Rishus Rabim, the bit that rolled out of your hand, you can roll it back. Does anybody want to say why? Why, if it's higher than 10 tefachim, without to roll it back? It's not Rishus Rabim. Why is it not Rishus Rabim? Over 10 tefachim is never Rishus Rabim. Over 10 tefachim is never Rishus Rabim. This is something you should write down on your fridge, Moshe. That's right. It's on your fridge. Anything higher than 10 tefachim is not Rishus Rabim. You should remember that. If you theoretically could carry and never lower your hand more than 10 tefachim, you won't be doing anything. So if the Sefer Torah, you're standing on the roof, the rolls is higher than 10 tefachim, the bit that rolled down, so you're really up to that end of the Sefer Torah, so it's only a little bit rolled down. Since what rolled down is not in Rishus Rabim, so therefore your mamish fine. Go let's we should get a sort tefachim. Once it got to 10 tefachim. So now we have three shittas. Shittas Tanakama is Hofchei like Sav, you turn it over. You turn it over because you can't roll it back up because it's with intent for Rishus Hashanah. So bringing it back from Rishus Hashanah to Rishus Hayachid is really what is. It's not. It's almost a deraisa. Why is it not deraisa? Because part of it is still in your hand. So it's not deraisa. It's like a deraisa because part of it is in your hand and part of it is in Rishus Hashanah. But therefore, since it's like a deraisa, it's in a drabban. Therefore, you're not allowed to bring it back. You can only turn it over. What's the teres of turning it over? To protect the ink, a certain coverage for the sefer. As long as it's got a needle space, that means it hasn't reached the floor proper. It's gone from the roof to 1 centimeter above the ground, or 1 millimeter above the ground. Good, so you can take it back up. Why? Because it hasn't done a hanocha in Rishus Rabbim. Even if it went on the floor, let's finish off the Mishnah. Since we want to protect Kisvei HaKodesh, even if it lands on the floor, so we've got 3 shittas. You're standing on your roof, and unfortunately, part of the sefer rolled out of your hand. Shittas Tanakam is, as long as it hasn't reached within 10 tefachim, you can roll it back. Once it's within 10 tefachim of the ground, you can't. Shittas Rabbi Yehuda is only if it is touching the ground, you can't. If it's 1 centimeter, 1 millimeter above the ground, you're okay. Shittas Rabbi Shimon is even if it landed on the ground, you can take it back because it's only a shvus. Why is it only a shvus? It's popped in the Rishus Rabbim because you never left go. Since you never left go, so part of it is held in your hand. And it's like your towel, which is part of it in your hand. You're not over an Issa Deraisa by taking it back. So what did you want to say?
You're still holding on to it.
Right. So the question is that Yehuda is only matim when it's a double Durabbonim, meaning that you haven't got hanocha plus you're holding on to it. Rabbi Shimon is being mati even if it's only a single Durabbonim. Is that clear? Rabbi Shimon is saying even if there was a hanocha in Rishus Rabbim, since it's a 1 Durabbonim because you're holding on to it, it's okay. Why? Listen to the words of Rabbi Shimon. We want to show cover to the Sefer Torah. By towel, of course, would be also. They talk about what about, let's say, Nevi'im or Tehillim, that's also mutter. It's not Dafka Sefer Torah. Any scroll. Oh, we'll ask that question, maybe. Why? What about Lavud? Okay. Oh, we'll see. Let's see the goals like this. So really, this Mishnah is a bit problematic. One question which more discusses a very lot. The Mishnah, the second half of the Mishnah is talking about somebody on the roof. Rooftop is a Rishus Hayachid, like you all said. A scooper could be anything. It could actually be a Rishus Rabbim, Rishus Hayachid, Kamas, and Mokim Petul. The Mishnah split up the halacha into 2. It started off by talking the halacha of a scooper, which what did the Mishnah say? It is always permitted. And then it went to a rooftop, and they brought 3 different opinions as to what exactly is permitted. So the question is, we have to examine what kind of doorstep are we talking about. If it's a doorstep which is Rishus Hayachid, you're going to have a major problem that the Mishnah is contradicting itself. Because if the beginning of the Mishnah is where a doorstep is Rishus Hayachid, and the Mishnah doesn't bring a machlokas, and then later the Mishnah talks about standing on a rooftop and part of it rolled away, and then it does bring a machlokas, you've got a major stira in our Mishnah. Is it clear? It should be obvious that. Not clear. The Mishnah talks about 2 separate cases. One is somebody standing on a doorstep, and one on the roof. By the doorstep, how many opinions does the Mishnah bring? Only 1. No machlokas. If it rolls out of your hand, as long as you're holding on to some of it, you can bring it back. Masha'inkim, when it comes to the rooftop, the Mishnah brings 3 different opinions. Did it get within 10 tefachim? Did it get within 1 millimeter? Or did it get to the floor? So you see that there must be a difference. What's the difference? Right. Oh, so that we have to examine. That was what we have to examine. What's the difference between the first case of the Mishnah, which is a doorstep, and the rooftop? By the way, Ravam talks about the famous unfortunate Shaila where the Sifter falls, that everybody has to fast. But Ravam brings this Gemara down, and he says that we see from this Gemara, he sees from this Mishnah, that Lemaisa, when only a part of it falls, it's not considered as if the whole thing fell. So let's say Chas Shalom suddenly drops only 1 half of the Sefer Torah, and he's still holding on to the other half, he does not need to fast according to the Magen Avraham. Well, I didn't catch it. It did in the last case of the Mishnah. That's not the point. The point is over here, Legabe carrying. What do you say? Okay, we'll see another halacha Legabe this. Hey, what kind of doorstep we're talking about? We're talking about doorstep, which is a shayachid, which, how would you be able to say yachid? Look at Rashi. If it's 10 by 4, if the doorstep is 10 by 4, it's a shayachid. But come on, shusarabim, and it landed in shusarabim. That means if you would have left go of the whole Sefer Torah, then what would happen? You would be over Issa Deraisa from a Shusam to Shusayachid. So we hear the Mishnah is telling us that since you're holding on to one thing, we're not Choshesh, we're permitted because Kiddush. So Mani, who is this? Of Shimoni, it's the last opinion of our Mishnah, because the last opinion of our Mishnah was that if it lands in the Rishus Rabbim, we don't care. So the first case of our Mishnah, which talks about the skupa, and it does not differentiate between three opinions, it's mashma as going to Shimon. The Oma.
Falling, not being put.
Yes.
Therefore, it's even more of a Durabanan, no? It's fallen, it's not been
You're right, but it fell, it's not even a Durabanan. The problem is, now you want to take it back in. Take it back in is a problem. So what says, Mani, anything which is only an Issa, Mishnah with scoop on the doorstep, is a proper Shusayachid. It would come out that the first case of our Mishnah is Be'emes Shittas of Shimon. Because Shittas of Shimon is that it doesn't matter where it falls. Again, let's get it very clear. In the first case of Mishnah, it talks about standing on the doorstep of the Sefer Torah all the way. And the Mishnah does not make any differences. It doesn't matter how far it rolled, it's always permitted. Now, when we came to standing on the rooftop, we had three different opinions, whether it's within 10, within a millimeter, within the floor itself. So when the Mishnah in the beginning makes no opinion, it must be Shittas of Shimon. Ema Sefer, let's carry on the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda says, even if as long as there's a space, even if it's the size of a thread, it is okay. Even if it lands on the floor, so this Mishnah is difficult because the Mishnah starts off by bringing Shittas of Shimon, and then it brings a machlokas, and then it again brings up Shimon. In fact, the Rashba and the Mitzvah both asked and disturbed me terribly until I saw it. The Gemara could ask a much stronger question. My Rabbi Yehuda, you've got an opinion before Rabbi Yehuda about 10 Tvachim. The Gemara seems to ignore it for some reason. So they say, since nobody quotes that opinion, we don't know exactly who it is. The Gemara prefers to talk about not anonymous opinions, but opinions which are clearly stated. But the fact is, if you say that the beginning of the Mishnah is talking about Shusayachid, and the first time of the Mishnah is telling us that it's completely mutter, so the Mishnah is very problematic. It starts off by talking about the doorstep, which is a shachid, and tells you it's always mutter. And then it carries on the rooftop and brings you three opinions. How can that be? And Shimon is only the last opinion. Says the Gemara, indeed, indeed, it says our Mishnah is indeed a machlokes. And again, the Mitzvah explains very nicely that the Tanakh can sometimes do this. What he does is he says an halacha, and then afterwards he explains the halacha I just told you is not so straightforward. It's actually a machlokes. So this is the style of the Tana. He starts off by talking about standing on a doorstep, which is really a Rishus HaYachid. And then he says, if it rolls out of your hand, you're always allowed to bring it back up, even if it landed in Rishus HaRabim, because it's only a D'Rabbanan, and you're always allowed to save a Sefer Torah because of a Mokim Kavod D'Rabbanan. And then he says, but you should just know what I just told you is not so straightforward, because in fact it's a three-way machlokas, and the opinion I just told you was really Shittas of Shimon, that is always mutter. Yes, why I need to talk about the case of the doorstep? See, as a small nakuda, is that when they originally argued, they argued about the rooftop. So the Tana said that you should know that I heard this machlokes about the rooftop. It is difficult. Okay. So the Gemara says, that is one explanation of our Mishnah. We're going to have a few. So the first explanation of our Mishnah is that the doorstep is a shusayachid, and in fact there's no difference between the doorstep and the roof. Both have exactly the same halachas. And what the Mishnah says at the beginning as an anonymous, as if everybody holds with it, not everybody holds with it. It's in fact a three-way machlokes. Rabbi's got a different answer. In the first case, the Mishnah would talk about a doorstep that people all walk over it. There's two kinds of floors. There's areas which everybody walks on, and there's areas which less people walk on. The first case of our Mishnah is talking about a public throughway where everybody's going to be walking along it. And therefore, Chazal felt in such a case, with such a bizoyon, they were permitted it. So the second case of our Mishnah by a rooftop, it's a Rishus HaRabim, not so many people are going to go there. It's not so bad. Masha'enkin over here, where there's a lot of people, so therefore it's much worse. And therefore, says the Shach, a very interesting thing. I tell you, I don't try to make it more relevant. Unfortunately, it does happen as if Torah falls down. Terrible thing. Says the Shach, if it falls down onto a bench or something like that, which not a lot of people walk on, it's not as bad if it falls down on the floor. Because he says, you see from this Gemara over here like this, when it fell from a rooftop, what happened? We had a three-way machlokas. Why? Because it's not so bad, because not so many people walk there. It fell from a doorstep where everybody walking there, so there were more makel. Why? Because everybody's going to trod on it. So when it falls in a place where everybody's going walking, we're more makel, and therefore everybody agrees it's perfect. So far, we've had two explanations in our Mishnah. One explanation is that the first halacha of the doorstep is exactly the same halacha as the rooftop. Only the reason we mention it anonymously is because that's what the Tana held. And later he explains it's actually a three-way machlokes. Oh no, the first case is talking about a doorstep which everybody's going to be walking along, and therefore Chazal were more makel, they were more lenient. The second case is by a rooftop which they were not so lenient. Well, you would also be masculine in the first case because at the end of the day they're more lenient because everybody's walking. Yeah, everybody agrees. That's right. By rooftop, not as lenient as the first case. Now, the Gemara hasn't yet suggested the answer, which I would have thought is that we're talking about. Okay, no, let's see one side. The Bible brings a brisa which makes a difference if it's more than 4 amos or less than 4 amos distance from the roof. That means you got to Sefer Torah, rolled away from the Shusayachit, and you rolled into a Shusarabim. You could roll more than 4 amos. Now, there's an ism in HaTorah to carry from the Shusayachit to a Shusarabim. There's also an ism in HaTorah to carry within the Rosh Hashanah 4 amos. But over here, do you have either of these two problems?
Not in Mishnah.
Why not?
Because it didn't go 4 hours away and it didn't go down anything less than 10 12.
She said even more than that. Because you're holding on to the other end. Since you're holding on to that, if you've got a yo-yo and you're standing in the middle of M62, and you have a very long yo-yo, which is more than 4 amos long, and you play with it, right? You throw it back and forth. Have you done an Issa Deraisa? No, because it's never left go of you. What? Yeah, okay. So therefore, over here now, Mishnah, you don't really have the problem of Kaim Shesach Shusayim or Kaim Shusayim because both times you're holding on to one end. The Mishnah says like this. The Brisa adds that the whole head of the Mishnah is only when it's within 4 amos. It's within 4 amos. If we're talking about a step which everybody walks on, that means like this. Since we were discussing a skupa, which is a Rishus HaYochid, and it goes from Rishus HaYochid to Rishus HaRabim, so you've already got an Issa D'Oraisa. And it's a bit more complicated what Abai Shai says. Rashi explains you have to add to Abai. If we're talking about a doorstep which is a Rishus HaYochid, and the outside the doorstep is a Rishus HaRabim, so you've already got an Issa D'Oraisa. And the only reason it's permitted is because you're holding on to one half. If that's the case, what difference does it make if you rolled 1 amma into Shabim or 4 ammas into Shabim? Either way, you're not going to be over Nissa Deraisa because you're holding on to one end. And either way, if you'd let go of it, you would be over Nissa Deraisa. That means, Bishloima would make sense if we're talking about a doorstep, which is, let's say, a Carmelis. Then it makes a difference whether they rolled 4 ammas or not. Why? Because if it's a Carmelis, so if you could argue like this, if I leave go, I'll only be over Issa D'Rabbanan. If I don't leave go, it's only a double D'Rabbanan. If I let it more than 4 amos, so then it's not going to be a double D'Rabbanan. Because if I leave go, it's a proper Issa D'Oraisa. So therefore, by not leaving go, it's only 1 D'Rabbanan. Meaning like this, if we're talking about a doorstep which is a proper Rishus HaYochid, and the whole heta is only because it went into Rishus HaRabim, so either way you've got an Issa D'Oraisa. It's only a question whether you let go or not. If we're talking about the Carmelis, then it makes a difference if it's 4 amos or not. It would be D'Oraisa if it's more than. Because if you're standing in the Carmelis and you let go, and it rolls more than 4 amos, and then you bring it back in, then you'd be over this D'Oraisa because you'd be carrying 4 amos in the Rishus HaRabim before you even get to your Carmelis.
How you bring it back in too?
Even if you don't get it back into anywhere. Let's say you're holding on to a Sefer Torah, you're standing in the Carmelis, and it rolls out of your hand more than 4 amos. And then you realize, oh, that's a terrible thing. You bring it back. So you're walking 4 amos in the Rishus HaRabim before you get into the doorstep. So therefore, if we're talking about a doorstep which is only a Carmelis, it makes a difference when it's more than 4 amos because there's a potential D'Oraisa. But if we're talking about the doorstep itself is Rishus HaYochid, never mind whether it goes more than 4 amos. It's already is a D'Oraisa before the 4 amos. It says like this. What?
Going out is not a problem
because you're holding on to it. Yeah, we're talking about the chashash that when you bring it back in. You're right. When it goes out, it's not a problem. We're only discussing the potential for danger when you bring it back in.
Like if you have a ball
That's right.
Brought it down the hill.
You've done, yeah. Actually, the problem is, but bring it back in. The Mishnah is discussing how can you bring the Sefer Torah back in. That's what the Mishnah is discussing. We're talking about a karmelis. If it dropped completely on my silei, you'll never come to a device because A, you're standing in a karmelis, and B, it never went more than 4 amos. So therefore, surely Rabbanan Chazal allowed you to bring it back in. If it went more than 4 amos, if you do bring it back in, you could potentially come to chiyuv chatos. How? If you let go of it completely. So they show the Rabbanon, they don't allow it. So Bias says like this. In our Mishnah, we talk about a doorstep which is only a karmelis. And that's why the Brisa makes a difference if it's more than 4 amos or less than 4 amos. Because if it's more than 4 amos, you've got potentially to be over this deraisa of carrying it within the Shusabim 4 amos before you bring it onto the karmelis. If it's less than 4 amos, it's not a problem because there is no potential for Issa deraisa. Why is there no potential for Issa deraisa? Because what could possibly happen? It didn't go 4 amos in Shusabim. The doorstep is only a karmelis. There is no potential for Issa deraisa to even occur. Since there's no potential for Issa deraisa to even occur, that's why we permit it. So it comes out the first case of our Mishnah is going according to everybody. Why? Because there's no potential for Issa deraisa because you yourself are standing on the karmelis. Now the Gemara next few lines is going to ask them the following problem. What happened? You were standing on your doorstep reading from a Megillah, let's say. It rolled out less than 4 amos. Therefore, there's no potential for Issa deraisa. Why? It's less than 4 amos and you're standing on the karmelis. There is a potential for Issa deraisa. Where's the potential for Issa deraisa? That you might pick up the Megillah and take it back into your house and read from it inside your house. And then you'll be carried from Rishus Rabim into Rishus Yochid. So therefore, why is it mutter? Oh, so you carry from Rishus Rabim into Rishus Yochid over a karmelis. Is that awesome in that or not? It depends. If you didn't settle on the karmelis, then it is Issa deraisa. Says the word like this. No, because over here, you're right in the argument, but the point is like this: over here, he dropped it. So what's likely to happen? He's going to want to bring it back into his house. So that is the more likely thing. Oh, I'll come back to do it. Otherwise, he can't allow him to do anything. Maybe you'll carry it from the Shusam to Shusayachit. If you say if there's a karmelis in the way, that's on board, there's no problem. Imagine you carry something more than 4 amos, and when you carry, this is how Tosfos describes it. This Tosfos over here. You carry something Rishus Rabim, and you take it to another Rishus Rabim. You take it to the same Rishus Rabim 4 amos further. You carry it over your head. He says many times people carry like that. You pick something up, and you take it. You say, "Oh, that's right. Yeah, I'll put it over here." Now imagine that from there to there was more than 4 amos. Now above my head is always going to be more than 10 tefachim. Above 10 tefachim Rishus Rabim we said is what? A mokim patur. So you might say, if that's the case, I should be mutter. No. Says rather, since there was no delay, it means I didn't put it down on my head, but I just went like this over my head, so I passed it over derech halav, over himself, I'm chayav. So also over here, when I carry it from Rishus Rabim to Rishus Yochid over the karmelis, I should be chayav. We'll talk about a very big doorstep. A person will remember. So he's not going to bring it from Rishus Rabim to Rishus Yochid, he'll only bring it into a karmelis. We're talking about a short one. And what happens is, you pick it up, you're going to look into it. Because you're not going to pick up a Sefer Torah or Megillah and stop, just bring it to that. You're going to look into it. Where are you going to look into it? On the karmelis. So therefore, you're going to stop. So come from Rishus Rabim into a karmelis, and then from a karmelis, like sometimes your wife tells you to do Pesach dinim. So you say, okay, I'll do this fun. You take a Sefer off the shelf, you look at it for 5-10 minutes. Meanwhile, you're out of the mess and out of the way. And then what happens is you can spend hours and hours doing one bed, one shelf, and you've got a few shelves. You can be at it for weeks. So the same thing over here. What's the chashash? You're carrying for Shusam to Shusayachid? No, because you're carrying for Shusam. You look into it at the faith of the Gemara. No, if you look into it, where might you look into it? You might look into it in the Rishus Rabim, and then finish looking into it, and then carry it directly from Rishus Rabim into your house. There's a shittas ben Azai that every step you're walking, it's as if you stopped walking. If you walk and you stop, then you're potter. Ben Azai holds that when you're walking, you can argue it as a scientific thing. When you're walking, is it that you're doing one fluid movement, or is it that you're taking hundreds of little steps? Ben Azai says it's like you're taking hundreds of little steps. We had it in Shabbos, and Tus asks the kasha there, according to Ben Azai, how can you ever be chayav for carrying 4 amos? I walk one step, I stop, walk one step, and I stop. Anybody remember the answer of Tosus? If you remember the answer of Tosus, you can have a drink of hot water. What?
Jumping.
Oh, jumping. He says if you pick it up and you jump for Amos, you're chayav. The Rashba gets so upset with that Tosus. What do you say? Oh, that's what they ask. Very good.
Jumping
They
all
say,
three, four,
how often
five.
does the person jump more than 4 Amos? It took time. Leapfrogging. You doubt more than 4 Amos, so I'm scared of that. Very excited. Okay. The Maisa could be that. It says, maybe you'll throw your sefer Torah. I says, if you throw it. You're not allowed to throw Kisvei HaKodesh. I was once, he told me they used to go to a certain Shiur, and then what happened was the Maggid Shiur once at the end of the Shiur closed the Ashbal ritual and threw it down onto the table. So that was the last time I ever went to that person's Shiur. If a person has that zilzal that they can throw Ashbal ritual, I am not interested in going to their Shiur. Rav told me this story by himself that he stopped going to the Shiur because the person threw a sefer. Okay, it's sad. I won't say who it was. Anyway, it was our Kisvei HaKodesh. Nice, there's no chashash. If you actually think about it, there are 3 different mahalchim which in the first half and the second half of the Mishnah. We'll go backwards. One mahalach of the Mishnah is in the first half of the Mishnah is about a skupa, which is a karmelis. Since a karmelis is only to our bonom, therefore we're more equal, and everybody agrees it's all right. But actually, the second half of the Mishnah is talking about a rooftop, which is a shusayachid, and therefore it's more chamor. The more asked by karmelis that we should be chayshish for other things like carrying it through the shusayachid or throwing it, and all the things that Gemara says we're not chayshish, you don't throw. And you might stop in the middle, so we're not chayshish. So the first half of the Mishnah is more kuladik, it's more lenient, like you said right at the beginning, that we're talking about a doorstep which is a karmelis. And if it's a double drabon before you start, it's a drabon because it's a karmelis, and it's a drabon because you're holding on to it. That's the last malach thing. The first 2 malachim of the Gemara is no. We're talking about a doorstep which is actually a shusayachid, and therefore it's just as bad as the rooftop. The only reason why we're more meikul is either beres we're not more meikul, and the first halach of the Mishnah is v'shittas of Shimon, which is the last, and the Tana is just telling us our halacha, and then afterwards telling us actually it's a machlokas. Alternatively, we're talking about a place where a lot of people are walking, and therefore more meikul because it's more results. Let's carry on. Are you allowed to turn a sefer Torah upside down? You're not allowed to turn it so upside down. You're not allowed to turn a sefer Torah upside down. You have to put a clothes on top of it as you're walking out of the room. There it's possible. It's impossible. Rashi says, why is it impossible over here to cover it? Very good. That's what Tosus says. He says, I don't understand Rashi, because Rashi says, why is it impossible? Because he's got no clothes to cover it. So this is, first of all, it's very unlikely that somebody should have no clothes to cover a sefer Torah. And second of all, why didn't you just say a simple answer? Because it says this b'chinom. Rashi said it was a waste of time. Because really, Rashi should have just said that the same problem of taking the sefer Torah in, you're going to have the same problem of taking clothes out. Why did Rashi say you've got no clothes now? Look at Rashi. Rashi says, it's the second bottom line of Rashi. She'enu beggar differ, he's got no clothes to cover it. So sis, I don't understand Rashi, as you all said yourself. You could have written Tosus yourself. That why did Rashi have to say that? Why did Rashi not say that the problem is because carrying it out? If you don't do it over, it could be or be a bigger bizoyon. So I just want to point out the Shachid Yehuda when Risha and Zayin says that he has seen people that they learn and then they leave the sefer open and they leave it for days like that, and they should know they're being over nissa. Because the Gemara here says that those who write Sforim shouldn't turn it over because it's a bizoyon, but rather they should cover it with a talis. Why should cover it with a talis? The answer: they need to leave the sefer Torah. They should cover it. You see that you shouldn't leave the sefer open. And the Shach writes that there's a mazik, a shindalet, which is called shindalet, a shade, and he's called, and it's Rosh Hashanah's Shemer Dafim. He guards open pages, and if he sees people being mezalzel in this form, he makes them forget their learning. So therefore, a person should be very careful. Maisa Chazlish writes, Maisa Ish, the quote Chazlish, that it's only if a person stops learning completely. Unless a person goes to the bathroom, or a person, for example, needs to stop, let's say his wife asks him to help, it's in the middle of learning. So you go out for half an hour to help, you come back, where you're not really stopped learning, you have to stop, then you don't have to. I've seen people be machmir always to cover, but you should know that the Chazlish held only if you've stopped completely, that you finish learning. You're not planning to use the safe anymore, but I've actually been many times to other houses, and I've seen Sforim open on the tables for a long time. Because, even when they've gone out for minachel, things like that, because nobody's stopping. It's a matter of themselves. But the Shach says you should not leave your sefer open. And this, I just would say very, very quickly, is the Chachmas Odom. was the mechutin of who was the mechutin? Who did his son marry? The daughter of the Vilna Gaon. It's quite a good shidduch, though. It's married the daughter of Vilna Gaon. Vom Danzig, he was called. He wrote that he heard from his Rebbe that the Shach knew the name of the Malach that would remind him of any sefer he ever needed to look up, or if he was tired to write, he knew the name of the Malach that would write for him. The Shach wrote a very lot. So it's quite convenient, yes. I suppose if you have to, okay. But he sees the Shach knew these kinds of things. He says you should be careful. Here we get is a slightly more complicated again. What happened was like this. You've got a Sefer Torah, unfortunately, rolled out of your hand. And we have 3 different opinions when you're allowed to put it back, 10 tefachim, a millimeter, or on the floor. Who cares how much it went? That means even if it went on the first shitter, even if it went less than 10 tefachim to the floor, right? I'm standing on the rooftop. It rolled down, it's let's say 3 tefachim from the ground, 5 tefachim from the ground, who cares? But you have to have a hanocha. There's no hanocha. Without a hanocha, it doesn't matter. No, because you've got triple shvus. Or you've got, depending on the Kabbalah, you've got the pastures we're not talking about, there's an extra shvus. We're talking about a sloping roof. Did you put up such a picture of a sloping roof? A sloping wall. What did I say? Sloping roof. It's the same. It's the roof slopes all the. No, they don't have a picture of it. That's right. It's got. Right. So what happens is like this. So your Sefer Torah is rolling. It's touching the ground. There is a hanocha. We're talking about a sloping wall. If there's only a needle space between the floor and between where the Sefer Torah reaches, it's okay. Now we're talking about, I'm standing on the roof. Here's the floor. The Sefer Torah rolled all the way. Because if it didn't roll onto a roof, there's no hanocha, right? It has to roll onto a roof. Now, if there's only a centimeter space, so then there's papa hanocha. Why? Well, hanochli. He did a papa hanocha. Because in the end of the day, here you can't say standing in the air. There's papa hanocha. Oh, it's a centimeter higher. But we've had an halacha many times about Rosh Hashanah, unless you've got a proper bump in the ground, it's considered part of the Rosh Hashanah. If you've got a pavement which is 2 centimeters, 10 centimeters higher than another one, it's still part of the Rosh Hashanah. So this part of the wall is part of the Rosh Hashanah. So therefore, when they went down to there, why did Rabbi Yehuda say it's not yet had the hand noch in the Rosh Hashanah? Of course, it has. If it's only a centimeter away from the Rosh Hashanah, it's got a proper hanocha. Even more, up to how much? Up to 3 tefachim pashas. More than 3 tefachim we'll see. Answers the Mishnah is missing. You have to add as follows. Let me take this. Mishnah starts. When did I say up to 10 tefachim is on a sloping wall? Because on top of Tzadik Chesed base. A wall which is not sloping, meaning a wall like this, which is standing upright, and the wall Sefer Torah is rolling and it's floating in the air. So the Malam Shloisha had 3 tefachim kulula. You can roll it back up and slowly. No, again. If it slopes down, then within 10 tefachim of the ground, you're already not allowed to pick it up. Why? Because since it's within 10 tefachim and it's a slope all the way to the ground, if you've got a ramp from the roof to the Rosh Hashanah, so if it goes down the ramp and it settles on the ramp, then if it's within 10 tefachim of the Rosh Hashanah, you're not allowed to roll it back up. Because it's hanocha. If it's higher than 10 tefachim from the ground, meaning it's higher up on the ramp, then you're allowed to. If it's not a ramp, but rather a standing up wall, and this thing, then it's up to 3 tefachim.
There's only one shus.
Yes.
Had enough on the shus. There's only one shus.
That's right. There's only one shus because you're holding on to it.
If it's a ramp, apparently, you might more than
Right.
Yet gone to 10 tefachim.
Right. Okay. We're talking about it's less than 4 hours. Yes, must be less than that. You're right. So God says like this: if it's higher than 3, good, let's take a pick it up. If it's less than 3, you turn it over. And again, we have a mistake, and they put the 2 dots inside. Yesterday, I told you that the Dukei Sufim tells us it's a mistake. Here, the Shash tells us that these dots are a mistake, and I hope the article took it out. Oh, because the world carries on. Because again, let's go to the Mishnah Selekis. If it's a sloping roof, it's within 10 tefachim. If it's not a sloping roof, but a dangling roof, meaning like a straight wall and it's dangling in there, it's up to 3 tefachim. Only a small slant. Why? So the machlekes and the common of Yehuda is as follows: you've got a wall which is upright, and the Sefer Torah is rolling, and it's hanging in there. According to the Kamma, if it's within 3 tefachim of the floor, it's no good, because that's called hanocha. Why is it called hanocha? Because since it's within 3 tvachim of the floor, it's considered as if it's on the floor. And Yehuda says no, it has to be actually on the floor. If it's even 1 centimeter above the floor, it is okay. Says Rava held that if you have something, if you're carrying in Rishus Harabim and you take it to Rishus Hayachid, but you don't put it down in your garden, you keep it a tefach up above your garden, says Rava, you've not done a hanocha. A hanocha has to be literally a proper hanocha. This the Mikatanoim on the Shema, I'd say, well, Rava says, again, you are holding on to the Sefer Torah, it's already only 1 shvus. And it's rolling down, it's hanging like this. Tanakama says if it's within 3 tvachim, you're not allowed to put it back up. But Yehuda says as long as it doesn't touch the floor. So the Machlokes says, do we say once it's within 3 tvachim, it's considered as if it's landed? That is what Rava said. That Rava said that if it's as long as you haven't done a proper hanocha, it's not considered landed. So what Rava says is actually Machlokes Tanoim. Oh, we'll see in a minute. So Rava says, "Elo kulo Rabbi Yehuda yivchso mechso." We're adding now more parts in the Mishnah. V'achitani. Tamedom mamon because mishupa. Because it's sheni mishupa. If pochas sheish tvachim kulo etzle. Tanakama holds even less than 3 tvachim. You're allowed to take it up. And this Tanakama is Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda. Ina after any misluk no etzelem reachud kulo etzlo. My tamed bin anoch gavei mashu. So it comes out there's actually only 2 opinions in the second half of the Mishnah. You've got Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda. Again, if you've got a ramp, everybody agrees that if it's within 10 tvachim of the floor, you're not allowed to roll it back up. Why? Because it's a proper hanocha l'shus harabim. Except for Shimon, actually, Shimon would hold you still allowed to. If it's a roof like this, and the Sefer Torah is now rolling and it's in the air, so if it's within a centimeter of the floor, it's okay, because it's not on the hanocha. Once it's landed on the floor, you can't take it back up. And as Shai says, what's Shimon saying that you're allowed to take it back up? The answer is because it's always 1 d'Rabbanan, because you're holding on to it. Rabbi Yehuda holds you have to have a double d'Rabbanan to take it up. Rabbi Shimon holds even a single d'Rabbanan, you're allowed to take it back up. Yes, that's the sugi of the Karmelis, but it was a triple d'Rabbanan. The Rabbi held the sugi. A new mission, a new topic. Ziz shlifnei achaloi. You have a shelf in front of your window. Noisnolav noitim of the Shabbos. You could take and put things on and take things off. So there's a picture of it. It's good to see the picture just a little bit. So you've got picture, sorry, I have to find the page. Picture Tov Kuf Ayin Dalet. If you don't mind looking at it for a second, you've got, very good. That's a very good way of word. I forgot about that word. But no, it's not a windowsill literally because it's not by the window. But if you look at the next picture, that is a windowsill. Show them the next pictures. You've got Tov Kuf Ayin Dalet. We had more foreign pictures. If you look, you've got Tov Kuf. No, Tov Kuf Ayin Dalet is not windowsill. It's lower than the windowsill. It's where you put flowers on it. A ledge. Oh, tough to find. Hey, you've got a ledge. You've got windowsill plus a ledge. Oh, very good. In order for it to be Rishus Hayachid, how high does it have to be above the ground? 10, and it has to be 4 wide. So I haven't got so much time. I would like to get at least the next Mishnah. How is this? This ledge, the Mapik Leicha, where is it going out onto? If you're saying it's going to Rishus Harabim, what's going to happen is like this. That you've got a ledge outside your house, and your house is on a Rishus Harabim road, let's say Beruni Road or M62, wherever it may be. So what happens is, you've got a ledge, and we said the ledge is higher than 10, and it's 4 tvachim wide, and as you correctly pointed out, that's a proper Rishus Hayachid. So therefore, what's the halacha? You're allowed to take things on and off. On Shabbos, you could take from you put your flower pot there, you can put your oranges there, wherever you want, you can put your bananas to ripen, etc. The problem is, that the second it falls off the ledge, it's going to go where? To Rishus Harabim. And now you're not going to be happy to leave it to the Rishus Harabim. Why? Because you put on the ledge to keep it safe. So immediately what you're going to do is put it from the Rishus Harabim onto back to the ledge, which is a proper Issa D'Oraisa. So how can we allow you to use a ledge? How can imagine you walk on the street, since somebody's got a ledge out of his window, you start using it on Shabbos. There's a proper chashash that somebody from the Rishus Harabim will come in to use it. So how can you use it? So Elabai. And we're talking about the ledge goes out to Rishus Hayachid. What in the world could possibly go wrong? It is a Rishus Hayachid. This is a Rishus Hayachid. You're only allowed to put on it things that if they fall, they will break. All earthenware things. The minute they fall off, they will break. So you can't possibly use them. So therefore, you're allowed to anything which there's no chashash that you might come after it's fallen off to put it back on. Again, these 2 dots, I would consider them to be a mistake. Tani Rabbi Yochim. Ziz. a ledge if they are chaloi. Ayoytz l'shusavim. Nois nolav you can put on it ka'olos, bowls, v'koises and cups, containers, jugs, v'tzluchias and plates. Ubishtamesh b'chol ha'koisel. You can use the entire wall ad asor tachtonim until 10. That means if you've got Rishus Harabim, you can use the shelf as long as it's more than 10 tefachim above the ground. If it's less than 10 tefachim, you can't use it anymore. So imagine you're walking past a home. If it's got a ledge higher than 10 tefachim, you can use it. Lower than 10 tefachim, you can't use it because it's part of Rishus Harabim. It becomes awesome. So therefore, higher than 10 tefachim with Rishus Hayachid, you can use it from your window. Now, all these cases, Rashi points out, are all cases of things which easily break. So for not choshesh, you put it back on. If there's another ledge, you can use it. If there's two ledges, one's low and one's high, so you can use it, but not the top one, only opposite the window. If you've got two ledges, you can use the one opposite the window, but not across the whole wall. You've got a ledge. Let's say this is the window. Imagine the base sol is the actual shusayachit. Here's the shusayachit. You've got a window. Below the window, you've got one ledge, and below that, you've got another ledge. Now, we just said that the ledge you're allowed to use across the entire wall, even if it's not opposite the window. Let's say the window is very narrow. You're allowed to use the ledge across the entire wall, but only the bottom one, not the top one. The top one only opposite the window. What's the logic of here? How is this zechitami? What's the case? What we talk about? If we're talking about that the top one is less than 4 and is higher than 10, mokim petuhu, it's a mokim petuh. That means you shouldn't use it at all. Because even though we've said till now that you're allowed to use a mokim petuh, says Rashi from this Gemara, it's muchach only on a rare occasion. If you remember, we had this bollard that you're allowed to take the shusavalim, put in the bollard, etc. That's only on a temporary basis. We do not allow you on a regular basis to carry from Rishus Hayachid to Mokim Petur or from Rishus Harabim to Mokim Petur. So here you've got a ledge which is less than 10 by 4, so it's a Mokim Petur. So therefore, if you're going to use it from your window to it, it's a regular basis, and therefore that's no good. No, because it says Mishtarish for you can use it. Use it. It doesn't mean just put something down. Use it as you can use it as a ledge. No, it doesn't. It says that you can pass. You can put something on. If there's got 4, we could have to use the whole thing. So if you look at the picture very carefully, once you've got the kimta, it's very straightforward. You've got like this. You've got two ledges. The bottom ledge is 10 tefachim above the ground, and it's 4 tefachim wide. Anything which is 10 tefachim high and 4 tefachim wide is considered a shusayachit. And that is mutter because it's a separate domain. The ledge above it is not 4 tefachim wide. It is only, let's say, 3 tefachim wide. But you've also got the width of the window. Since it's got the width of the window with the width of the ledge together come to 4 tefachim. So there you're allowed to use it. But yes, directly above. But if the ledge goes longer than the window, that means it goes past the window on either side, then you can't use the ledge on either side. Why can't you use the ledge on either side? Because there is not 4 tefachim, it's only 3 tefachim, it's not a private domain. No, it doesn't. That's the chiddush. We don't say it's part of the one. So the lower one, which is 10 by 4, you're allowed to use it across the entire range. The higher one, which is only 3 tefachim wide, you can only use it where the window is mashed them into 4. Where the window is not mashed them into 4, you're not allowed to use it at all. Okay, we'll stop here because it's a new Mishnah, it's a new topic. It's every Mishnah here is like a slightly new halachas thing. We have to make sure I get to that week. So Mitzvah Shem, is everybody aware Mitzvah Shem will be a siyum? We want to keep it as private as possible. I want everybody to, off YouTube. We'd like very much everybody to come. It's a very special Mitzvah.